now I've been trying a long time that I want to find that kind of unconditional love that I was having before when I had nothing to be happy about. But it feels so hard.
So start there. So stop saying those words, first of all. But start there by saying, when I had nothing, I found it. And now I have so much more, I'm having a hard time finding it. So you've got to ask yourself, what is the difference? When you had nothing and you were reaching for everything, there was no resistance. But when you feel like you have everything that you are now going to lose, now there's resistance. Isn't that interesting?
Yes, and I feel guilty that I don't make full use of my resources that I have.
Well, guilty is the way you feel when you think a thought that your inner being doesn't think.
That's true.
Let's get this straight. Let's get this straight. Let's talk about what's really happening. Because when any of you say, I feel guilty, you mean when you say that, I should be doing something different.
Right.
The only thing that you should be doing different is thinking the way your inner being thinks about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Do you hear that? Your inner being doesn't think you should be doing something different. Your inner being doesn't think that you should be making better use of resources. It's your beating up on yourself that's making you feel bad, not the fact that you're not utilizing your resources better. Is that clear? Do you understand? In other words, you're misunderstanding your guidance system. Your guidance is, it is saying one simple thing. That's not the way we see it. That's not the way we see it.
Yeah.
When you feel negative emotion, that's what we want. Those are the words we want you to hear. That's not the way we see it. When you say, I'm not good enough, it feels bad. That's not the way we see it.
Yeah.
When you say, I'm too old and you feel bad, that's not the way we see it.
Yeah.
When you say, I can't get there from here, and you feel bad, that's not the way we see it.
Yeah.
And that's all that bad feeling means. It means you are shooting yourself in the foot right now with this bogus thought that is not the way we see it.
That's
and
true.
The way we see it matters because we're standing over here in your
That's
vortex
true.
with all your stuff. We're
That's
over
true.
here where it all is. We know how to get it to you. We know the path of least resistance to get it to you.
That's
and
true.
that feeling is just your indication that you're right now got your shield up and you're not letting it in. End of story. That's all. It doesn't mean you should have done something different. It doesn't mean that there's some better thing that you should have been doing. It doesn't mean you've missed your opportunity. It just means right now, in this moment, while this emotion feels bad, right now you're doing it. Right now. It wasn't that you got too old over a period of time. It wasn't that you missed the opportunity in some way. Right now you're doing it. Right now in this moment of emotion. Right now you're doing it. Right now.
Yeah.
You see, have you ever had friends who got dirt on you, meaning they had you on something that you did that you shouldn't have done, and they never let you forget it? It just comes up over and over. You still owe me. Remember, you still owe me, they say. We're being playful. Maybe Esther watches too many movies, but it seems that that's the way it is in your environment a lot. And what we want you to understand is that the source within you isn't harboring anything about anything that you've ever done before. It's all real time. When you feel negative emotion, it's about what you're doing right now, when you could do something different. That matters, don't you think? This negative emotion means I could make a better choice right now. So if you've got a lot of momentum on it, like you know how it is for the dancers, and you know how early in life they start, and you know how much they have to know, and you know what these benchmarks all are, we can see how you could be standing at a place outside of that structure and using the structure itself to beat yourself up.
Yeah.
But if you have decided that you're not facing reality, you're not writing a documentary on how people become dancers in China. It isn't about some statistical documentary. It's about something entirely different. It's about you feeling good, period. It's about you feeling good. Then you can stand right now and find some way to soothe yourself. To soothe yourself. You have to find a way to soothe yourself. So let's talk about some of these things that we've been talking about. And you show us that you can soothe yourself.
I have another question.
When you say, we want to hear it. When you say, I feel guilty about, go there. I feel guilty because I'm not making good use of resources. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I feel guilty. If you would, we would like you now. Do you feel guilty right now?
No.
Oh, then it won't work. You have to feel
because
guilty.
my dream just came true.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, really? How could that possibly be?
I
How could that possibly be? Given your unworthiness and all.
Well, I feel like this was
and you are old. You are old. You're old. Usually it's much younger people who we call to the chair.
Yeah, I could feel guilty now about some other things. You just depending on others. Yeah. Like for example, I got here in New York and there's so many amazing things, but I didn't make full use of them. And sometimes I found you say follow your inspiration. Sometimes I relax myself and I get impulse, but I resist it. I didn't do it. I don't know why I didn't do it. Maybe maybe you were doing something else, and maybe and maybe that part of spiking up the solution was in the process of spiking up the problem. Okay.
In other words, the solutions that you are now wanting to experience for yourself were created by mixing it up. In other words, the problem is part of the solution.
Really? That's nice.
Isn't
because
it?
I don't feel like those pen is like, it's like I feel like it's for something. It's for a great solution. Maybe like one day I will.
Well, would you want to get out into a really good restaurant? And there's one right here in this hotel, but don't go because there'll be too many of you. Would you want to eat all of the food for the rest of your life today?
Not at all.
And so, do you want all of the insight to come today? Do you want all of the paths to unfold today? Or do you want just the path of least resistance? Do you just want enough pleasurable path to unfold that you keep yourself living happily ever after? That's the way you want it to be. Just enough today to keep yourself living happily ever after. Now you can orchestrate how fast you move. In other words, you have some control of those things. And we know, Esther said to someone the other day, I'm becoming a vibrational snob, she said, about herself, because she's used to the fast-moving energy. She's accustomed to things going well. She's accustomed to clarity. A little bit of confusion she doesn't like at all. She doesn't want things to slow down. She wants things to move fast, and she wants them to be efficient, and they most often are. But do you really want the same pace all the time, or don't you want some ebb and flow in everything? Don't you want to go from contentment to enthusiasm? Do you really want to be in enthusiasm all the time? Don't you need contrast in order to define? And don't you need contrast in order to appreciate? On the Canary Island cruise, a group of them, Esther and her family and staff, rented some four-wheeler contraptions, and on one of the Canary Islands, which was largely volcanic, it was really a desolate looking place, went off-road through washes and across this rough terrain with dust flying everywhere. They were having a very good time, but it was dusty and bumpy and dusty and bumpy and dusty and bumpy and loud. And then they came to a place, and they walked over to a cliff and saw, from Esther's point of view, the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. A pristine beach. Nobody goes there because it's desolate and dusty and bumpy and dusty and bumpy and dusty and bumpy and far and dusty and bumpy and far to get there. But they were laughing and having such a good time, and they were playing music, and they were trying to introduce their driver to the music that they like, and he was sort of getting in the spirit of it, and then he began singing along and actually seemed like he knew the words, even though he couldn't possibly have known the words because he'd never heard the music before, and it was dusty and bumpy. And when they got there, the impact of the beauty of the place was huge. It was bigger for Esther than so many beautiful things she sees, because the contrast helped it to be focused in a different way. Do you sort of get what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Don't you enjoy your food when you're a little bit hungry? And don't you enjoy a really good conversation when you've been hanging around with dull people? In other words, don't you want the contrast in order to help you sharpen it? Don't you need the light and the dark in order to see it all? Don't you need contrast in order to even focus your eyes? Isn't contrast beneficial in all things? Don't you want to sort of give up the struggle and stop asking for perfection, because perfection smacks of endedness, and there's never going to be that for you? Don't you just want to be on this journey and just allow the source within you to flow? You see, this is the most important thing that anybody will ever say to you or to anyone. This matters so much. This is what you're reaching for. As you stand at this focal point where all of us and everyone, all who are your ancestors and all the dancers from before, all of the appreciators of life, everyone who's ever lived, and there are so many we can't even define that, are all focused with you in your moment, with such non-resistant love and adoration and appreciation for your willingness to be here, and for your perception of life, and for what you've put into your vortex, and from who you are. The love is so big and so strong and so steady that when you get crossways of it, you feel guilt. That's all. There's nothing to feel guilty about. It's just that guilt is how you feel when you don't let all that in a moment. Now, if you were someone who hadn't summoned it, you could be standing in some of those places and not feeling that at all. In other words, if you'd never wanted for anything, not having it wouldn't bother you at all. You've focused it into being. And the very guilt that you feel, this is the most important thing that we want you to hear. The guilt that you feel, that's good. The guilt that you feel is the indication. The guilt that you feel is the indication of the goodness and the perfection of where you stand. Because if it weren't like that, your deprivation of it wouldn't be there. You see what we're getting at? Even the fact that you can feel negative emotion. You couldn't feel negative emotion if that stream of pure positive energy was not flowing at you. So even my guilt is evidence of my goodness, is what we're saying to you. You get that? It's also evidence of your desire, evidence of your powerful desire. So
what should I do?
In normal terms, we would say, just lighten up, have more fun, be less efforting, because the very effort is your enemy. And that seems counterintuitive, because it seems like when you're learning to dance, when you're learning to do all of those things, that it takes effort and it takes focus. But effort without alignment doesn't yield you happiness.
Yeah.
It just yields you medals and accolades from other people. It doesn't yield you alignment. And alignment is what happiness is. This steady stream of realization is what you're reaching for. It's a steady stream of realizing who I am now, who I am now, who I am now.